Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the regular council meeting of Monday, November 27th, 2017 to order. And I'd like to call to order the open portion of the meeting and a approval of the agenda, including the supplementary information that should be on your desks.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the vote. All in favor? Okay. Adoption of, first item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes for the minutes of November the 6th, 2006. No, November 6th, 2017, Committee of the Whole meeting. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, first up we have delegations. First one is South Island Prosperity Project, Mr. Bruce Williams. Welcome.
I won't be long. Oh, it starts automatically, I think. How long do I have? 5 minutes. Then I will push go. My name is Bruce Williams. I'm here representing the South Island Prosperity Project, which is the economic development agency for the capital region. The organization presented to council, I think, almost 2 years ago, and it was in its formative stages. My relationship with the organization was that I served on the interim board that actually created the current incarnation of what this organization is. So since it's been up and running for about 18 months, there's a lot to report. It's been very successful and very progressive, and I wanted to keep my eye on it, so I've stayed engaged for that reason. And I know at the time, initially, the district here had made a commitment to become a member and a part of the South Island Prosperity Project, but that offer was later rescinded. We, in the meantime, had some contact from a gentleman named Corey Anderson, who's a project manager for the Chamber of Commerce here. And the fact that over the last 18 months, some enormous progress has been made by this organization on behalf of the region, including Sooke. We thought it might be time to revisit that, so I've come before you, first of all, to ask if anyone has any questions, first of all, about anything you may have seen or heard or read about the South Island Prosperity Project over the last little while. And if there's any questions I can answer, my colleague Dallas Gislason is here as well, so I may call on him to answer the hard questions. But I'm here to see if there's anything that I can answer for you right now or any comments you might have about the organization, if any.
That's it?
Oh, no. But I thought I would begin with that. There are some things in the last week or two that have happened that you may have caught through media or other sources. We prepared and released something called the Prosperity Index, which I think you're all familiar with the Vital Signs report that our friends at the Victoria Foundation create to take a look at the social infrastructure and condition of life in the capital region. The Prosperity Index is the same thing except it's for the economy. So it was a very solid, in-depth look. You have a copy of that actually in the package that I left for you. There it is. Yep. So the Prosperity Index was issued. South Island Prosperity Project is also the organization that is leading the project to fall under the umbrella of the Smart Cities Initiative from the federal government, who have put up a fund of $300 million for municipalities to basically compete and bid for grants of varying amounts to show how smart they are, which is a great plan for the future to make us more sustainable in terms of housing and technology and transportation and all those items. So the Capital Region project is being led by the South Island Prosperity Project. So those are two of the things that have come along, but a whole myriad of other things have happened with the organization in 18 months. The membership base has grown and have had a fair amount of impacting events and processes happen. So I guess really what I'm here to say is, would council be willing to reconsider a membership within the organization? And if so, could I answer any questions about that, or could my friend Dallas answer any questions about that? Is council in a position to reconsider membership based on your initial agreement, but which I understand was rescinded because of some discussion that was held after the fact? So that's basically the proposal that we have, is would you consider, once again, joining the South Island Prosperity Project? And if so, can we talk about next steps to make that happen? Hi.
Not really a question. I would like to think that council would relook at it
considering everything that you have done over the past year and a half, and to see whether Sooke would be a good fit with it. And I think that we should give this some serious thought. Thank you.
Thank you. We really feel that Sooke would be a big part of this and would bring great progress to the area. Hi.
Hi, thanks for coming tonight and presenting. I was strongly opposed to it from the beginning, and I don't currently have any other reason not to be.
Okay.
Because the cost for being involved was pretty high for, at the time, what we saw as a low return on our investment.
Okay.
So can you please tell me what the return might be? Is there another community that would have invested the same amount that we have? I don't recall because it was
There's
year
a
ago.
formula for investment. It's an
And-
equitable format for all municipalities. That's $1 a head and 0.07% of taxes levied. It's the same formula for every municipality.
Okay.
So for that reason, Victoria and Saanich lead the way in the amount, but they have same equal footing with all municipalities because the funding model is exactly the same for everyone.
So what would we see in something like this that would help our citizens?
It's an expansion of the economy, creation of prosperity. The number one priority is to expand existing businesses that are already here.
Sorry, just to clarify, how would
Yes.
that directly impact the citizens of Sooke?
Well, existing businesses would benefit from the prosperity created and the economic growth that would happen across the region. There are probably businesses here that might need some help, that might want to be talking with some people for purposes of mentorship or contacts to help them find investors, to help them find new markets if they export. The organization actually led the China trade delegation a couple of months ago and took product from Sooke with them, actually, from Tugwell Creek that went with the organization to China. And it's an opportunity for any businesses in Sooke to engage through the municipality with SIPP to grow their business. And if you are looking to attract new business here because you do have some areas here that would allow for development, that you want to expand whatever nature of business or industry you would like to see here, the South Island Prosperity Project can help you do that through
Right,
the context
and so
they have.
this is just triggering one of my, again, this was a while back that we discussed this. I'm
Okay.
still open to hearing more and seeing how we can be involved.
Sure.
But I'm just thinking back to what my thoughts were back when we first made that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my thoughts was that we can be involved anyway. And so now I'm hearing that our citizens have been involved anyway. So what would the difference be, just so we can have it on record here, what is the difference between us just being involved as we have been as a community and then being involved with the financial?
Well, as a member in full standing, you're showing a leap of faith and a show of faith in being involved with the organization and joining 10 of the other municipalities in the region who have joined in for that same region to start to create this model of prosperity and economic development in a sustainable way. We want to make sure that all voices are heard within the plan that the organization has in place. You would want a stake in whatever decisions might be made to affect your municipality, and frankly, it would be helpful to know what your goals and what your priorities are to fit into the plan, the business plan and the strategic plan for this organization. If I may, one of the things that's interesting about this is that those of us who have lived elsewhere in Canada know that all major municipalities and regions have an economic development organization. It's what keeps them stable. It helps them diversify their economy. It helps them withstand downturns like happened in 2008 and 2009. And that's all done through an economic development agency. To have a conversation in this region about economic development has taken, frankly, a bit of a leap of faith because it hasn't been part of the lexicon here for 25 years. So for us to come along and start this organization up on a regional basis, smaller municipalities have had their own, but something on a regional basis is something that has not been in place. When the downturn happened in 2008 and 2009, the capital region was one of the slowest areas to recover from that because there was not an economic development plan in place regionally. The amount of money being invested per capita regionally was far below the national average. National average at the time was about $5.50 a head. Across the capital region, it was 41 cents that was being invested in economic development. So the recovery, one of the simplest, maybe not the most accurate, but a simple way to measure it is what your GDP growth is in the course of a year. At the time of the downturn, GDP growth in the capital region was fourth highest in Canada. As of a couple of years ago, it was 28th. The organization that formed in Halifax to create the Halifax Partnership at the time of the downturn, out of the 30 major municipalities in Canada, Halifax was 30th. As of this year, they're number one in GDP growth because of the value and the structure and the strategy involved in economic development. It gets kind of nerdy, And I'm not really the guy that could answer that for you, but in another colloquial term, a high tide raises all ships. And Sooke is a part of the capital region. You have a unique culture, you have unique geography, you have unique opportunities, and you have unique challenges here. And working together with an organization like SIPP, I think, would help you progress that forward.
Thanks. That does help answer my question quite a bit.
Okay.
I guess that my final note would be that we have difficulty, a lot of difficulty separating ourselves from the West Shore and other communities and having a voice. Our voice isn't heard at many tables, even though we are part of them. So if we were to continue a relationship or build a relationship, I would prefer that we do have a stronger voice.
You would have an
than-
equal voice
than
with
at
every other
tables.
municipality. Everybody's got one vote, so you would have an equal voice. Well, within this organization, you would have equal representation, for certain.
Yes, thank you. When you guys came 2 years ago, I was a huge proponent of Sooke joining.
Thank
I
you.
was actually the one that came to the table and I attended 3 or 4 meetings in Victoria with the group. My feedback back to my council was I felt that Sooke was going to be lost. What I got out of those meetings that I attended was that the focus was around the core as well as the peninsula. There were initiatives that were being talked about that were out towards the airport and the core. And regionally, that's something that we've sort of been plagued with out in Sooke. Even when we do things at the CRD board table, we're sort of left out and behind because we're a bit farther removed where from the density of the population is.
Yes.
So I wouldn't mind reading the materials that you supplied and having another look at it, but I struggle with the fact that we do have our own Chamber of Commerce within Sooke, and we also have an economic development working group that has started amongst our stakeholders and our businesses in town. So for me, it's a struggle to leap forward and completely commit again based on the fact that regionally we are sort of left behind. But that doesn't, like I said, I will go back and read through the materials and look at the success stories that you have had over the past few years.
This might be a step in you not being left behind anymore.
And see if Sooke fits into that model. So thank you for coming.
Okay. We hope it does. We feel it does. I just want to see, did you want to add anything to what anybody said? He's a lot smarter than I am when it comes to this stuff because he's an actual economic developer. Is there anything that we should add to what I've already said? I think would be...
No, I think it would be great if we had an opportunity to address specific concerns and follow
Yeah.
that conversation.
So if, in next steps, if you would like to meet with the executive of the organization, with the CEO, with some of the private members, even representatives from the other municipalities, the post-secondaries, the First Nations who have all joined the partnership, we've got some pretty significant employers in the region have joined the organization because they want to be a part of the progress that we're planning and the successes that we're planning. And we would love to have you as part of that dialogue because you do fit in the municipality. You want to protect the character of your community without being assimilated into the rest of it because you are a distinct part of the region. And with great respect to that, we want to make sure that you are included in all the conversations where prosperity and economic development could happen here, as you see fit.
Okay. Well, thank you for your presentation tonight,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Williams, and thank you for the questions from councillors, and I think you'll be hearing from us.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nope. Okay. The next delegation we have tonight is Mr. Haldane. Herb Haldane. And it's the homeless shelters, affordable housing, micro-housing options.
How's it going? The reason I came here, I mean, we used to do the open mic, so it was a little less formal, and this is really the only way we can address council anymore, so delegation might be a big word for a presentation here. The reason I'm coming forward with this is I'm working a lot of construction sites, and what's happening now is we've got about a 0.5 or 0.6 vacancy rate in the town, and there's nowhere for a lot of these workers that we desperately need here who are coming here to live, to rent, so on and so forth. So there's a fair number of them that are living in their cars, they're living in their campers that they bring on the trucks, they're coming here from Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, you name it. So we need to come up with a temporary solution. I don't expect, new bylaws to be changed to allow people to stay in yards and stuff like that permanently, but we have to come up with a short-term solution. And I do see that there's a affordable housing, workshop that's coming up, within the agenda here. But I'm afraid that that's just going to take too long or too much time. I mean, this is something that's desperately needed immediately. And these guys, I mean, they have to dry their clothes and their boots and things like that. And I don't even think it's just to these guys. There's all kinds of other working families and stuff. So I don't know what the answer is other than maybe allowing temporary, maybe camping or staying in a motorhome or a camper or something in some properties around Sooke until we come up with a better solution. 0.6% vacancy rate is something that we can't deal with, and you can't tell them go find a place to rent if there's nothing available. And then there's also people who are even farther down the food chain now that you've developed Lot A and started putting people out of other properties. There's nowhere for them to go either, and they are human beings after all. So I don't know how to deal with that end of it. I do have another component to this, which is this micro-housing thing, and I think that's going to be the next push for home ownership for younger people because they're not going to be buying these $700,000 and $800,000 homes. So we have to come up with something in our bylaws that allows this to happen. 16'4" wide is the minimum width of a house we're allowed in the community right now. I think we have to change that, allow it to be 8 feet, 10 feet, whatever you want. But we have to allow for something and maybe some higher density on some smaller lots. You get 3 or 4 homes on lots. I've gone online and looked up plenty of it, and they're doing it in other parts of North America as well as other parts of Canada. But more importantly, the bigger cities now are allowing 4 houses on a lot that used to allow 1, but they're very tiny homes, and people are sharing in services and sharing in taxes and tax burdens and so on and so forth. So, I mean, my reason for coming forward tonight is to at least get some dialogue going on it, but more than that, this temporary solution for people, whether or not we have a piece of property in Sooke that we're willing to give up. We pay money every month for parking, for people who go fishing, for people who shop in the downtown and so on, and we rent those spaces. So these other people should qualify for similar situations, especially as important as housing is. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haldane. So is there any questions from any councillors? I have a couple of comments, and I think that, Mr. Haldane, you're hitting the nail right on the head, and I recently attended UBCM, and it was a constant theme, not only for us, but for communities throughout British Columbia. And it's not just the where you think it's the high-priced ones. It's Revelstoke, Golden's, Tofino was an example where people are taking advantage of Airbnbs and converting their affordable rentals into short-term rentals because of the more money, and it's become an issue. And you're right, we have to do something as a community if we're going to entice people into the affordable market. I just saw that the Langford's price is now $742,000, their average selling price. So and Sooke's is creeping up there. That's not affordable in a lot of terms. So, and we have to have workers in here. So good presentation. Is there any other comments or questions from anybody in council? So thank you.
Thank you very much
for your presentation.
Thank you. My concern is growing daily because the traffic down there from the Girl Guide Camp to Sooke Road is frightening, and the parking is all over the place. So something has to be done there. And go back to March the 9th of 2015 when this council moved that they had to do something with that parking and traffic on Sooke River Road. And here we are. You know, it's only a few years later, I realized, but it's dangerous, and some little child is going to pay the price, is my fear. And every time the subject of parking comes up, it goes across the road from the playing fields onto what was supposed to be a park. We paid $765,000 for that property across the road. It's almost entirely, I think, in the ALR, but it's all agricultural, except the piece that we gave to the horseshoe pitching group. And really, there's not a lot of parking available on that property, if you know the property really well, from Highway 14, there's one in there that's not ours, and then this starts. But during the years of the mill, sawdust was dumped over that bank by the truckload every day for I don't know how many years. So that part of it might not be a good place for a parking spot, would be my guess. But what bothers me is that we've paid $765,000 for it. It came out of the Park Reserve Fund. We either make a park there, excuse me, or we put the money back into the reserve fund. And the problem is that every time this subject comes up, from the playing field side comes the call for parking over there. And it should have been taken care of when the playing fields were being changed. But this council has stayed away from that piece of property because I think, frankly, you don't know what to do with it. And we should never have purchased it in the first place, but that's another issue. I don't know what the answer is, but I also don't want to pay any more to create a parking lot there. If there's going to be a parking lot on that property, we need to get the $765,000 back into the fund, and somebody else is going to pay to make a parking spot there. And that somebody has to be the ones that are across the road that are causing the problem. Now, I'm concerned about several things with this because there's a covenant that appears to have been ignored when this property was across the road was dealt with. And there are several other issues that I have that I can't raise tonight because they're too long and too involved. But the playing fields with the covenant, I would like to deal with that some other time. But what I want from you folks sitting up there is that if this is to become a parking lot across the road from the playing fields, we do not pick up the bill. Because we've already put out $765,000, and it's not got a lot of room for parking. If you go and look at it, the banks are falling down. As you know, we lost a piece behind the horseshoe pitch, and when they fixed it, they brought a lift out, like all the way out like that, so that eliminated a fair number of cars right there. It's not enough, but something has to be done on that road because it's your responsibility. I've talked to the RCMP and I've talked to Highways. The responsibility to protect the public on that piece of road is with you folks. So let's not delay any longer. Make some decisions, do something, but don't put any more dollars on us when we've already paid out what we've paid out for that property. So that would be my request to you. It terrifies me to be on that road. And the Girl Guide Camp is right there, and there was a Sunday morning when I went down the road and they were parked over onto what is our, bike trail. That's another issue we won't talk about. They were parked all the way up there, and they were parked on this side, and little youngsters were trying to go across where there's a crosswalk there right on that corner, and you could not see them for the cars that were parked on both sides. And I drive that road every day, and you have to act on this because it's not all adults we're talking about. If adults want to run across a road, I guess they can do that, but please act on this thing and don't put any more bills on us.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Is there any questions from councillors to Ms. Hall?
No?
I would just like to say I appreciate your comments, and I know what you're talking about, and it's been a complicated thing, and it's been an issue that we've talked about on and off for 7 years now. So
but one of the things that could have been done would have been to ask to have it out of the ALR, so at least we can do something without having to go and ask them every time we cough. And the responsibility's up there.
I believe there was a request at one time. I think we put us into staff and got a report back from the ALR. I think through the staff.
Because why would they not move to take it out? I mean, if you could grow anything on there besides alder trees, I'd be surprised.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Through our CAO.
Thank you, through your worship, through to Ms. Hall. I believe the district did make application through the ALR to have an alternate use for that piece of property. We didn't request for it to come entirely out of the ALR, but we did ask for an alternate approval, and we did receive that.
That was for the horseshoe pitch, was it not?
Yes.
Yeah, and we also gave them $300,000 to play with.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Next delegation we have tonight is the Fuca Salmon Restoration Society, Miss Alita Pierce, and designation of Sooke as the smoked salmon capital of Canada.
Whoops. Smoked salmon is not a new idea that someone dreamed up. It's been part of this area's culture forever. Sooke and salmon have been together for centuries as the Sauk people dried and smoked their catch of salmon to sustain them for the year's food supply. When Europeans arrived, it didn't take long for them to catch on to the same skills. I wasn't even school age when I learned that smoked salmon was a delicious way of life in this community, and I believe it's still the same today. Some councillors may recall that when Janet Evans was mayor and Liz Johnson and I were representing Sooke at Communities in Bloom conferences throughout the province, we came back and stood before council and asked that council designate Sooke as the volunteer capital of Canada. Happily, that designation was done. Today, the Fuca Salmon Restoration Society is asking that council designate Sooke as the smoked salmon capital of Canada. Just before coming here, I got a call from the CBC about that. They seem to be interested too. Our organization believes that while charter fishing is well recognized and well promoted in Sooke, as a community, we also have the potential to extend the awareness of Pacific salmon further into the fall months. Besides our regular salmon enhancement and education work, we have taken on two endeavors. First, to establish a smoked salmon judging event open to non-commercial entrants from anywhere in Canada. The smoked salmon event in September this year at the Charters River was so successful with 100 judges that we had to turn many away. And we plan to extend this happening to double that capacity for the numbers of judges that can participate in the future. Initially, Wendell Milne, Margaret Banner, and I were the fledgling committee. And this year, Lee Boyko and Pete Wilford joined the group of organizers chaired by Wendell and can attest to the enthusiastic response of those who wish to participate in a smoked salmon event. You may be aware that the longtime fishing family of the Valdses have provided a perpetual challenge trophy in memory of their pioneering parents, William and Sarah Valls. For the past 2 years, this major trophy has been awarded to the entry which won by popular vote, an entry out of Gibson's on the mainland. Here is the trophy and the keeper for this year. We also wanted to promote awareness of the salmon spawning phenomenon, so we were able to acquire a permit from the Ministry of Transportation that allowed us to place a temporary large sign on Highway 14 east of Sooke River Road to promote awareness of this fascinating attraction of nature. And did that sign ever work? Previously, we had many folk come to enjoy seeing the spawning in the river, but after the sign went up, the figure was at least tripled as people flocked to witness the phenomenon. of spawning salmon. It was great to see visitors from all over Canada and the U.S. and many countries of the world, but it also brought our own local folk, where dads came out with their families on the weekends to witness this facet of nature. We hope councillors see these things as positive steps forward for our community and will decide to make the designation of Sooke as the smoked salmon capital of Canada. Thank you for listening. I got 56 seconds left.
Okay, I'll take all of that. Thank you, Mrs. Pierce, for your presentation. Any questions or comments from councillors? Councillor Loggins.
Thank you, Mrs. Pierce. That was great. I did get to attend the Smoked Salmon Festival for the first time this summer, and it blew my mind. It's one of the best things in this community, I think. So I'm glad to hear that it will be expanding. I guess this is a question that I can ask you, but is it easy enough for us to just make a motion to have that designation, or do we need a formal process?
I believe we can make a motion tonight, and I think we'll do that. So.
Okay. Well,
okay.
I'll move that we designate Sooke as the smoked salmon capital of Canada. Second.
Moved by Councillor Loggins, second by Councillor Ray, and Councillor, all for discussion.
Through your worship, just wondering what you would like the district to do, actually, once we make the motion to accept. What is there signage? Is there something that you want from the district?
Were you to make that motion and pass it, we would be thrilled. Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to say? Councillor Ray.
Through you, Your Worship, to Mrs. Pierce, it's always nice to see you here. You always bring such great ideas forward for the community of Sooke. So we'd just like to thank you once again.
Thank you.
Yes, having the opportunity to be a judge in both years, it took me from one year to the next to be able to eat smoked salmon again. But no, wonderful event, and thank you always, Mrs. Pierce, for what you do and bring to our community. So.
Thank you very kindly.
And will Vanna Banner be picking up the trophies? Now, to our corporate officers, because I believe we got to go into unfinished business from previous meetings. Do we have public input at this point? Is that what should be on the agenda? And my guess, because it's not the way the agenda is written, but it's sort of where I think it should fit.
Through your worship, in the
That's why I'm asking. So
the council procedure bylaw has unfinished business before the public input section.
Okay, and the reason that I ask is that because there was no public input on these items. That's why I'm asking the question at the
There
level.
still could be.
There still could be? Yes. But it would be after the fact this time? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. See, I was checking on that one. Okay, so the first item on the unfinished business is the Firefighter Career 2017 recruitment selection process, and we have a report, a staff report.
Thank you, Council. This report is for information only regarding the hiring process that went underway this summer. Initially, the approach was to stagger the start dates with one hire starting in October and the other hire starting in the beginning of the new year. The cost-saving rationale was discussed with staff, and a number of reasons are outlined in this report. Current staffing includes 4 career members, including myself. Our role in the fire department, we can incur quite a significant amount of overtime. In the short term, this may be a benefit, but in the long term, it's not a sustainable process and doesn't reflect good management. Council supported the hiring of 2 firefighters for a couple of reasons. One was the vacancy of the retired deputy chief, and the other one was to support, the overtime that could be incurred. The external hiring process started in July and it ended in September. It was an extensive and very time-consuming process. The report shows some of the statistics that were part of the process. We received 178 applicants. 24 were invited to a written testing process, 17 which were able to attend. Out of that, we moved 11 to the University of Victoria fitness testing requirements. 6 attended a panel interview and 1 was done through Skype. Out of this, we found 2 candidates that showed the strong criteria of what the panel was looking for. The hiring committee was pleased to identify these strong candidates, and the cost-benefit analysis of supporting the 2 starting at the same time is outlined in 3 categories. These categories are budgetary reasons, external reasons, and some human resource reasons. The budgetary considerations look like almost an estimate of about $35,000 in savings if we were to start both in a November start. We looked at about $13,000 in savings with potential of eliminating overtime. A savings of about $12,000 with vacation payouts not being incurred. A reduction in relief shift. And also the hiring process was estimated to be at about $3,000 of staff time and exams. The human resource considerations were quite significant as we're trying to avoid potential burnout with the career members. Have the opportunity to take vacation time that hasn't been able to be done in the last year and a half. As I mentioned, the hiring process was very time-consuming and exhaustive on staff. We can also look at training and orientating the new members at the same time, which has a benefit for success, and also getting the 2 to work as a team and support the recruitment training program with our new volunteer group that's starting right now. It's important to note that this was a team decision that was done with staff and the local union members. Some of the immediate external benefits are noted with the 2 members that we've hired. One is a well-respected member that's been a volunteer for many years and was the past president of the Volunteer Firefighters Association. We see this as a huge benefit to continue to support the high morale and the recruitment process to maintain a composite fire department. The other member is a well-respected lieutenant that came from a chosen that also has a background in bylaw enforcement, and we see long-term benefits on transferable skills to support where community safety and bylaw enforcement needs to go. We are confident that we selected 2 very strong candidates through this process, and it's not foreseen that the 2 firefighters being hired and starting at the same time will incur any additional costs to the district. I think this approach just shows a good example of good management and was very much supported with the volunteers as well. Take any further questions at this time.
Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. Any questions from staff? Councillor Parkinson.
Move
Staff,
recommendation.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Loggins. A few questions. With the budget and through the CAO to our Chief Financial Officer, Financial Director. So there were some assumptions made in the decision to hire them both at the same time. Are those assumptions proving to be true financially?
Back to you, Your Worship. Haven't really analyzed how that's been going. They just started, so I think it's a little early. It definitely will have an impact. We do, and we have been seeing a lot of payouts at the end of the year. This year, I'm hoping to avoid that from these hirings. Yep. There definitely would be a cost savings and a big time savings from a staff perspective on having to go through the training all over again. It's a demand on not only fire staff but our HR staff as well. But I believe the benefits are there. It's just it'd be hard to document them until closer to the end of the year and when we're done all the year-end posting of everything. So.
Okay. Yeah, and like I say, when I say the assumptions, I guess that my question through to you is that the assumptions are made based on a year-end report. So I'm asking your professional opinion. Is it that you prove that those you're expecting those to be true, or close?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm expecting they will materialize. Definitely over the 2 budget years, there isn't an impact.
Okay.
In fact, it is a savings by doing it that way. There's other factors that impact all those budgets, so it's quite a bit of work to peel it all out and say, yes, that one's due to that one, because we will have, there's just more service calls in general, so there's increased activity in all these other counts.
Thank you. The next question I have is to the finance director again. Is that the payout of the unused vacations? We see a reduction. That's another assumption in here. Can you explain that to me? So people are not taking their holidays, and then we end up paying them out, right? So.
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship. So what happens is they end up working as well. So we end up paying for, the way we do the budget, of course, is we assume they're going to take their vacation. They don't take it, they end up working and then get paid out. Okay. So it is an extra cost.
So the additional body should offset?
Correct.
Okay, got that. Okay, last question from me is probably to the CAO or to the chief. We agreed to the ratification of the collective agreement where we agreed in that agreement that we would hire 2 firefighters at staggered times. Is there any impact from a labor relations point of view on that? Because we signed it, we went through great lengths, and you did a great job of negotiating that collective agreement. And do we sign an MOA or something to offset that?
Thank you, Your Worship. That's a good question, and that was a significant concern at the start, but there was strong cooperation, and this was really led through a group activity with the local union, and there would not be any grievance associated with this. If anything, having something like this being done in November, starting the 2 members, it was agreed upon that it'll be more effective because we were looking at an initial hire in September, and it was getting deferred to October, which could have an implication of a grievance. But since we have a good, strong relationship with the local union, we don't see any impact with that at all.
Okay, so I think you answered the question because when we signed that original agreement, the first one was to start at September 30th, if I can remember correctly. But we deferred that till November 6th, right?
November 6th.
Okay.
Actually, October to be correct at the start.
Yes.
Beginning of October. And then November 6th was the start date for the 2 members. Okay. So we deferred one and accelerated another. Okay,
so yes, so the understanding then is that the money and the wages that were paid from, or should have been paid from October, there's no grievance, there's no procedure that they're going to come back on us.
That's correct, because the benefit of the 2 members starting has a better impact on the labor union as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Through you to the Chief, thank you for that explanation, because my concerns were sort of procedurally with the collective agreement as well and what that would look like going forward. And then through you to Mr. Blackwell, I think you answered this when Councillor Pearson was talking, just with respects to financially, the way these 2 started as opposed to breaking it over 2 years. When I first read through the material, I immediately thought we'd have to go through another budget amendment process, which I was dreading. So I'm just looking for clarity and assurance from you that we do have that room to have both of them start now as opposed to breaking it over the 2 years like we previously had laid out.
Yep. Through Your Worship to Councillor Berger, we did budget for a full year. Like the budget is there in the department budget, so we don't need to worry about that part of it. And then overall, I think, yes, there is, because we did delay one and accelerate another. There isn't really an impact overall over the 2 years.
Okay, thank you. So there won't be any need to do any sort of amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to to the Fire Chief. I'd just like to thank you for the time you put in to outline how the decision was made to hire these 2 firefighters and the timing. I think it takes a lot of initiative to make sure that the savings are there. You recognized, and I appreciate that initiative. So thank you.
Hearing nobody else has any more comments, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, Chief, and thank you for 2 good hires.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a presentation per se. The report that was prepared for last council meeting coming before you tonight is for information only. And the reason it's coming for information at this point in time is for your deliberation in anticipation of the upcoming budget discussion. There is a lot of information within this report, and we wanted to get it to you as quickly as possible. And in particular, if you want to review page 58 of your agenda, starting on paragraph 3 under the 5-year road improvement program, it summarizes what we were looking at in sort of a simplistic form, but we hope to make it even simpler, a simpler form in the upcoming budget deliberations. And from that point, I'll just field questions from you if you have any tonight.
Councillor Loggins?
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate this report. I know the community probably really appreciates this report because it's something that we've been asked so many times about. So thank you very much for this as we head into budget deliberations, and I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Loggins, second by Councillor Ray. Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. I just want to just echo what Councillor Logan said. In reading this report, the information in here is awesome. I mean, I learned tons about how road networks work and how much is involved with patching and sealing, and it's a really, really good breakdown that I think the public can even understand as opposed to what our roads sort of look like. So thank you so much. And if later on in the agenda, if there is a finance committee, I think it's perfect, or going forward, same with what Councillor Logan said, in our budget deliberations, this should be front and center too. So thank you.
Councillor Parkinson? Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, I'd like to echo the statements of the councillors as well. This is a great comprehensive report, and it will aid in a lot of decisions going forward in the budget 2018 year. So. So, if you recall, is there a staff report on this? CAO? Thank you.
Yes, there was a staff report that was provided to Council when you initially considered this matter, and I believe more information came forward. The Mayor has asked for reconsideration by Council. And the recommendation was that the Council provide a letter of support from the Ministry of Forest, Lands and Natural Resources operations showing continued support for the Section 17 reserve to protect the shellfish industry within the Sooke Harbour and Basin for an additional 10 years. Some questions came up from members of the public with respect to this ban for 10 years. Concerns were raised with respect to current commercial and any potential commercial uses of the harbour and basin, and I think that's why the Mayor asked for reconsideration on this matter.
So, through our corporate officer, I think the first question I have to ask is Council willing to reconsider this? Is that what I have to do? Call a vote on that?
Yep. I mean, the Mayor has asked for reconsideration, so the issue is in front of you, and you can determine whether it should be reconsidered or not.
Okay, and then we can debate it right after that, right? Okay. So first, so
you need a motion?
So I need a motion to, I think we just have to have a vote, don't we? Isn't that right, for the reconsideration? Because the Mayor's already brought it back, so it's whether Council is unanimous in reconsidering it.
Yeah, the original motion that would be in front of you would be, the question should be called on that motion again, and whether or not it passes, and then there could be additional debate if necessary.
Okay. Thank you. So I will call the original question again. Defeated, right? Count right to our corporate officer.
Sorry, I didn't see
We've
the vote, but
defeated.
if you could...
Yeah, it was unanimous.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so it was defeated.
Yes, and now if the council would like to consider an additional motion on that, or they can not consider anything further if that's their wish.
Okay, question, or Councillor Ray.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I have had some discussion with members of the community that seem to think that this is not a good thing for Sooke at this time, and so I'm not interested in providing any further time allotment.
I have a seconder for that?
No, it's not a motion. It's just a
comment. Oh, okay. Go. Oh, sorry. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, was a letter already sent to the ministry when we voted on it previously?
Through your worship, the letter of support was sent, and I know that a representative from another community has asked for that rescindment, but to my knowledge, the province has advised that the work has been proceeded upon, and that it is in fact too late to rescind it, but we could always try.
Okay, let's try. Okay. So I'll make a recommendation that we provide a letter to the Ministry of Forest, Lands and Natural Resources saying that we do not support Section 17 reserve to protect the shellfish finery within the Sooke Harbour and Basin for 10 years.
Do you have a seconder?
Second.
Okay. Okay.
I'm just wondering if Councillor Parkinson is actually moving a motion, or is she making a recommendation? Motion?
Motion.
Okay.
My question would be then, what would that look like? A secondary letter being sent out?
Yeah, I said to provide a letter.
Okay.
Right?
And I think what it would do is it just demonstrates that Sooke, the district of Sooke is withdrawing its support, basically.
Okay. So, any other comments? Motion and second on the floor? Well, I'll make a comment is that this looks like it's the just the shellfish, but what this actually does is it actually sterilizes our harbor from any type of economic development on the harbor, which has already been done for 5 years. So, businesses like Jenkins Marine that have recently located in Sooke, where there's 15 to 20 jobs down there, it would be impossible for any other economic engines on the Sooke Harbor. And, we have a working harbor, and we're very closely, we're in close proximity to places like Esquimalt, where there's still a lot of sea-based industries, and we wouldn't have any opportunity to develop any of that. So, anyways, this is, I'm not sure how I missed that the first time, but anyways, I did. Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. And further to that, when I went back and read why the mayor was bringing this back, I too sort of missed it because the first time we made this or passed the moratorium was to support the Sauk Nation in their shellfish harvesting and look at the study that they could do within the basin for the 5 years. What we didn't understand is exactly what Councillor Pearson laid forward. We didn't understand that was a blanket moratorium on anything within the basin. So, I mean, I would much prefer this going forward saying that we don't support it, because that should be handled on a one-off. If someone has oceanfront property, they should be able to go to the ministry and ask for whatever it is they're seeking as a one-off. It shouldn't be a blanket, no, you can't do anything. So thank the mayor for bringing it back.
So, hearing nothing else, I'll call the question. All those in support of this motion? Opposed? Carried unanimously. So, will the CAO look after that letter?
Yes, Your Worship, the staff will take care of this.
Thank you. Okay. Next is 8.4, correspondence received October 12th to November the 3rd.
So,
anybody want to bring anything forward?
yes, please.
Yes.
No.
Councillor Parkinson.
Actually, no, thank you. It's the next one. It's the next one. Sorry.
Move receipt. All those in favor? We have a notice of motion tonight to be discussed for the reinstatement of the SPA committee. Councillor Park. Is there staff? Additional staff?
So I requested that the Sooke program for the Arts Committee be brought back forward so that we could work on some projects that we started late last year so that we could move forward with them. And there's a number of members of the public that would like to sit on this committee. The guidelines that we have, the policy that's in place is good the way it is for the committee. So I would like to see it go forward again.
Any other?
So I would like to move that. I would like to move that council reinstate the SIPP program for the Arts Committee.
Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Logan. Any further discussion?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. In looking in the totality of 8.5 and all of these committees, I noticed the terms of reference that are currently sitting here. It does call that that there is the following may serve the committee in a resource non-voting capacity, and it outlines a number of staff positions. I just want to make sure that that is understood as that they may attend, and that that's not a requirement for staff to attend, that they'll attend when they can, but there isn't an expectation.
Through your worship, I'm okay with no staff attending the meetings. Thanks.
I have a question for the corporate officer. Is the SPA committee, is it a council committee or is it the mayor's committee? Well, I'm going to ask the CAO first.
I would defer to Councillor Parkinson as chair of this committee. I
Okay.
believe it's a committee of council, but Councillor Parkinson?
Okay.
So it was at the mayor when Wendell was mayor because you didn't have the SUPE program of the arts in place. So he made it the mayor's task committee,
Okay.
which I sat on.
Okay.
And previously it is a committee of council.
Okay. And the only reason I ask is because the mayor's not here. That's why. Yes, to our CAO.
Thank you. Through our worship to Councillor Parkinson, might I suggest we make an amendment to the terms of reference which stipulate that staff will attend from corporate services? I'll need a motion from council.
Go ahead.
So the motion could be added to that, stating that there is no staff required at any of the meetings. Pardon me? Sure. To amend the terms of reference. Okay with that.
Seconder, okay with that?
Yes. Okay.
Hearing no more comments, we'll call this. Is there anybody who wanted more comments? Berger.
Yes,
Berger.
just procedurally, when looking at this, the following committees have terms of reference. This one doesn't have a terms of reference. So can that be established when they first sit?
For the SUPE program for the arts?
Yeah, there's no attachment.
No, it's not. But
On
I
here?
said that we would go with the previous terms of reference. And
Oh.
that's what I just amended, stating that there would be no staff involved.
Okay. With that. Reinstated, right? Okay. That the Sooke program of the Arts Committee being reinstated. All those in favor? Opposed? The Sooke Community Center Advisory Committee, Councillor Loggins.
Thank you. I want him to make extremely clear that the terms and reference for the three committees that I've put forward are drafted, still draft, and just thought of by one person, which would be myself. So that I don't expect them to remain the same. I expect them to, especially for the next two, to change. And also, I would like the Community Center Advisory Committee to have another look at the terms of reference and make sure they're still up to date to what we could accomplish, and with what council knows at this point, because they are a bit outdated. So all of these are open to change. That is the first thing I want to make very clear. The Sooke Community Center Advisory Committee presented to council. That was their the last thing that they did as a committee, and the presentation did not take into account Lot A. At the time that report was provided, the lot was not open for consideration to the public. So there's a lot of discussion to be had with that, as well as one of the things the committee was hoping to do was having ongoing conversations with council so that we could quickly move forward and actually act on something. I know that council has an appetite to look at doing some renovations and some other things, but the conversation hasn't necessarily been had. And the other piece to this as well is that there are some community groups that weren't represented, so it would be nice to have them included in it as well, and see how we can create some community spaces that are inclusive to all the needs that were outlined in that report. So there's a bit more work to be done, and the people who are on the committee are eager to continue it, so I hope that council will be as well. And I guess I should make the motion that the Sooke Community Center Advisory Committee be reinstated.
Questions or comments from any other members of council? Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship to Councillor Loggins, will you be requiring staff support?
No, and that was put in, I believe, as May. And really, I put it in as May just to see what the appetite was. I know we don't have the staff to do that. So what I did discuss with Mayor Tate was perhaps having myself take any notes and create reports, and then I can work with staff directly to make sure that those reports come back to council in a way that is comprehensive. And that way, the note-taking is all taken care of by myself. But yes, no staff required.
Okay. Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to say that I am happy to see this come back. I think there was a lot of work that was being done, and I think there's still a ways to go to address the need for a very large part of our population. So I'd like to thank you for bringing it back.
Before I call the question, I just thank you, Councillor Loggins, and I think that there's a lot of options in our community to make this work. There's existing facilities, existing buildings, and I think that it has to be part of that bigger discussion. I mean, I always hear this Lot A and free property, but then when you look at level 3 of the building code and constructing a new building, I think there's some reality pieces here, though. But I'm really happy that you're chairing this and moving it forward. But I think that there has to be some really strong leadership from this committee that there's some best use facilities already existing in Sooke that I think we can capitalize on. So and that's out there, and I think that it's going to require strong intestinal fortitude to make this work, because everybody wants what they want without recognizing the cost. It's great to say that we'll have a piece of Lot A as an example, and I just use that as an as a public statement. It's not free land, because if you go to commercial occupancy or commercial building code, Part 3 of the building code, it's going to be $300 or $400 per square foot to construct, and I don't think we have that kind of budget. So I think that you've got some good ideas, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Next.
Thank you. This one's a bit different, and I think it could be fun and it could be an important use of my time. If anyone else wants to join me, you're welcome to. But essentially what I'm hoping, I guess there were a couple of the word's escaping me, examples throughout the CRD that I was looking at. One would be the Youth Advisory Committee for the City of Victoria, and another would be the Grant Committee for Coast Capital, which is all run by youth under 30. And I know that there are a lot of young people in the region that have a lot of great ideas, that are really brilliant people. Actually, one of our alumni is working for Tesla. So there's tons of really cool people around who have a lot of passion for this community, and they, I guess with the youth engagement strategy, what that would look like is it would be a youth perspective on what things these people can look forward to when they either raise families and continue to grow up here, or they return to this region. So I'm throwing it out there not just to council, but also to the community. It would require youth membership, so I would do a lot of groundwork on that to get people involved. But yeah, I'm open again. This is really just a draft based on the Advisory Committee for the City of Victoria, who's accomplished some really great things. So I'm hoping that with youth involvement, they can mold this into something that's a bit more comprehensive for them and see where we can go with it. So I'll make the motion. You're like, shut up, make the motion. I'll make the motion that that council form a Youth Advisory Select Committee.
Second by Councillor Parkinson. Any questions, Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Your Worship. And through Your Worship, to our corporate officer, when defining the committee as a select committee, is there any procedural requirements, or like, do you have to have a staff member, and how? I tried looking for it for myself, and I just couldn't recall what the process was in terms of determining what a select committee was.
Through Your Worship to Councillor, the terms of reference would identify the membership of the committee. A standing committee typically has at least half the members of council.
Okay.
And so that's the difference between that and an advisory committee, where there's typically only one or possibly two representatives from council on an advisory committee. But as Councillor Logan suggested, these terms of reference are just drafts at this point, and that could be ironed out when those come back to council for adoption.
Thank you. And just a follow-up comment. While I support committees in principle, what I'm very concerned about is creating new committees that will probably get started in January, and we usually take the summer off. Just the expectations that we could create for members of our community and getting things done before a new council comes in. That for me is important, because I think that's one of the things that I've seen through the 2 terms, is that we create expectations for the people in our community, and sometimes we find it very hard to deliver on that. So I'm going to be a little bit more selective in which ones I support tonight, but that's not to say I don't like the idea in principle. I just think trying to push all of this together in the last 10 months of our term, I think, is a little, the word's not coming, hopeful? That's not quite the word, but I think it's maybe overreaching a bit what we can really accomplish.
Okay. Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. Through you to Councillor Loggins, when I saw you bring this forward, I was excited because we've tried something similar in the past. We had, I think, 3 or 4 years that we tried to do a youth, I think we called it a youth council, actually, is what we called it, in the community. And unfortunately, it just never took off and ran the way we had all hoped it would. But having said that, I know the leadership group at EMCS is very strong and they're very active in the community. They also support the Youth for Change, where they send students to Ottawa. And so I do think that there's a tremendous amount of youth involvement. Right now it's primarily at the high school, so I'm interested to see where this group will take you.
Any other councillors? Councillor Loggins.
Thank you. That's very nice. And one of the reasons that I think this could have a bit more success, I'm hoping, is that I have a strong connection with people, not just in the high school, but I guess in that same age range of 13 to 30. I've worked in youth engagement for quite a long time, so I know how to do it properly. And unfortunately, Youth for Change doesn't exist anymore. So there's a little bit of a gap where we can actually look to fill that and solicit some of those students to be part of this. So that's what I'm hoping for. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Loggins. If anyone can do it, it'll be you. Opposed? Carried. Okay. The next one is Affordable Housing Select Committee. Councillor Loggins again.
You're not tired of hearing my voice yet. All right, so Affordable Housing Select Committee. I really hope this is a no-brainer. I know this is a lot of work, and as Mr. Haldane said earlier, there's a lot that needs to be done right away. I hope that this can get stuff done right away and not prolong anything. I'm really hoping this would be an active committee that will continuously be bringing forward information to council on how we can improve our bylaws to make our town more affordable and define what that means for our citizens. Hopefully you've taken a look at this and got a bit of an idea of who may be involved and what sort of things we're looking to accomplish. And I framed the terms of reference more as a long-term strategy because that is extremely important. At the same time, I do want to make it very clear that I need this to be an active committee, as we all do, as was mentioned earlier. So hopefully this is something that we can get people involved in right away and start making changes immediately. So I'll make the motion that council form an Affordable Housing Select Committee.
Through your worship to Councillor Loggins, it states that you're only meeting 4 times a year. So how will that affect it by getting everything done that you have listed here?
No, that's a good question. Again, this is extremely draft, and I probably just copied and pasted that from somewhere or didn't change it. But I mean, I'm open to getting stuff done on this one. So I think what the first step will be is seeing who wants to be part of it and how active they're willing to be, and then going from there. Yeah.
And follow-up question to that is, you require a staff member on this committee, but not the other 2? Is that correct?
I put it in there as a preference because it's going to involve a lot of policy and bylaw information. So it is better to have someone there who can answer the questions immediately instead of going back and forth and wasting time. So that was my thought process there. Again, I think it's more important that this happens than it doesn't. So I believe anything that it takes to get it happening would be great.
Councillor Loggins, you know, this is one that I think that we should all really be paying attention to, because I think you're hitting the nail on the head of policy and bylaw. You know, we had a presentation from a delegation tonight that talks about mobile homes as an example. Mobile homes are an alternative, and they are affordable housing, and we've got to. I think that this committee is going to point out some things, but I hope it gets traction early, because it's got to be from the bottom up. And when you said the bottom up, that's the bylaws themselves. The bylaws, and that's public hearings, that's things that people have to understand. And our CAO is, I think, goes in line with what we're talking about, certain properties being available and things like that, where we're going to consider different options. So we need to be very, very focused on what are the barriers, and there's a lot of barriers in place to affordable housing. You know, we talk it, we say it around the table all the time, but there's tremendous roadblocks in the way to making this happen. So, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, I'm going to come back to what I said before. I think this is a phenomenal committee, but it's going to take a phenomenal amount of work and time. And I am very leery of having that expectation for the community as we're approaching another election. So while I certainly appreciate and like the idea, this one I will not be supporting.
And I do appreciate that. However, there are people sleeping in their cars who won't have addresses to go vote with at the next election.
Great.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. A couple of points to note. Staff will be bringing a report forward to Council on affordable housing. Staff did bring a report in the previous Council, but I don't think it was as much of an issue then as it is now. So you can expect a report from staff on December 11th that might further inform the potential for this committee work. The second thing is a little bit more, a larger concern for staff is that we only have one more meeting until the January 1st start date for most of these committees, and that agenda is already quite full. So my concern is that we won't be able, we won't have all of the terms of reference for each one of these committees that is outlined in Section 8.5, nor will we have time to adopt all of the terms of reference and then advertise for people who want to join these committees. We'll be well into probably February and March before we get all of that done. So I just want to caution this council that there are processes in place when you are forming committees that need to be undertaken. So unless you want to have special meetings of council with respect to the formation of committees through December, and we're more than happy to try to accommodate that. It's up to the will of council to do so. So I'm just cautioning like how quickly you guys want to get started and how quickly we can in fact get this done.
Thank you to our CAO, and I hear all the comments, and I hear the concerns, and you're right. Is it takes the speed of government takes a long time. But I think some of these issues, definitely we have to keep them on the burner, whether it's through an election cycle or not, if it's important to the people of Sooke, and people can bring it up at that time. So I think that it's important to keep these moving, particularly the last one, affordable housing. And there's, like Councillor Logan said, there's people sleeping in their cars in our community, and there's people with no houses and no cars. So I don't know if we can even do enough ever, but we have to keep it moving. So, anyways, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried with Councillor Ray being opposed. Okay, the Land Use Committee, Councillor Casper, he's not here, so. So what I would suggest at this point is that except for we would skip through these and defer these to the next meeting, with the exception of Councillor Parkinson and Councillor Berger's two notice of motions. Is there another Councillor Loggins one? No, there's one Councillor Berger and one Councillor Parkinson.
They're not committees, though. There's just notice of motions.
Okay, so let's go down to the notice of motion, Councillor Parkinson. What is that? That'll be on the next meeting. Oh yeah, hold it. Our corporate officer, I forgot to look. Did you text me?
Yes, through Your Worship, if I could just suggest that council make a motion to postpone those three notices of motion for the committees to the December 11th meeting.
Okay. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Now, the next one down there is Councillor Parkett, valid business license. This would come up on the next meeting anyways, right? Okay, and that Councillor Parkinson has a notice of motion that the District of Sooke no longer conduct business with any business that do not hold a valid district or intermunicipal business license. That will go to our next agenda. Any Sooke business. Yep, sorry, didn't I not say that? Okay, so to our corporate officer, that will go in the next meeting?
That's correct, Your Worship.
If it's so
notice has
accepted,
been
right?
given.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Okay, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Okay, all those in favor?
Oh, there's going to be discussion.
Oh, yeah, we can. No, it's just going to go to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. You get to talk about it next meeting. Okay? All those in favor? Opposed, carried. The next one is Councillor Berger. That the District of Sooke develop a business license program where a one-time fee option could be implemented.
Am I allowed to speak to it? The wording is a bit different, but what I would like us to come back with at the next meeting is to develop a business license, a perpetual one, similar to the City of Langford and the City of Collet.
Do we have a seconder?
Yes, second.
Seconded by Councillor Ray. All those in favor that it comes to the next meeting? Oh, it's next. No. Well, you can talk about it. It's good.
I just would like to report back on why it's good to have this and why it wouldn't be.
Okay. Well, it would be up for discussion at next council meeting, the way I see it. Okay. So we call the question on the first one. All those in favor? What's that? Okay, we can't do that? Yes? Sorry, Caroline. You didn't text me.
Sorry, I misunderstood why the last motion was going through. We shouldn't be passing any motions when there's a notice of motion. It's just
That's right.
notices
So
being given.
It's been given so that it'll be on next meeting's agenda,
That's correct, for
Okay. I was right the
council's
first time.
discussion and vote.
Thank you. For both those notices of motion.
Just for those ones, not for the ones.
Yes. No, just the new notice of motions, okay? These are the new ones. And we've deferred Councillor Councillor Casper's, and Mayor Tate's. They can talk about that at the next meeting if they wish, okay? So these will be on the agenda on the December 11th meeting. Okay? So the next thing is a release of in-camera resolutions, Lot A fencing, and site security. And that the council direct the Director of Development Services into agreement for brush removal, remove of the building, and lease of fencing with funds to come from our operating contingency. So does that take care of releasing that in camera? Perfect. Okay, and that council direct staff to prepare a financial plan amendment to identify Lot A expenditures as a separate line item. And that's just in-camera information, correct? Isn't it?
Your Worship, I'd just like to speak to that. We don't need an amendment for that. What I've done is I've put a separate line in we have a weekly budget to actual report that we do. I've added another line in there that so we can track the actual cost for that. Council already approved the transfer from the contingency for those costs.
Yes, that was at our in-camera meeting, if I remember correctly, that we just wanted to make sure that we track the costs of Lot A since we bought it. Thank you. Okay, number 9, public and question comment period. So I'd like to invite any members of the public that would like to talk about anything on tonight's agenda to come forward for 2 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record when you get here.
Good evening, Jeff Bateman, 7083 Briarwood. Didn't have any comments when I arrived, but having heard what I've heard tonight so far, what I didn't hear was, maybe I'm going deaf. Mrs. Hall had the same issue, but can we turn the mics up in here? I don't know if that's possible. Secondly, the South Island Prosperity Project, it's interesting. I keep hearing that Sooke will always be the small fry in these regional amalgamations and configurations. And it strikes me that if we took a more proactive, standing tall kind of attitude and walk into these contexts, Mayor Tate, Director Hicks, and Councillor Casper surely can carry their weight and punch above their weight. Sooke has so much going for it. And so I hope that there will be serious consideration of this South Island Prosperity Project, and also perhaps there can be some conferring with the Chamber and the Sooke JDF ED group. CRD plastic bag bylaw, wonderful that we're supporting this in principle. You have two model bylaws there. The City of Victoria's bylaw is quite specific. The CRD bylaw is a little less so. So, yeah. CRD climate action for the Capital Region report is there, and that backs up what we were saying with the BCSEA presentation a couple of weeks back. There is definitely a need for the District of Sooke to start taking climate change mitigation actions, or at least studying ways in which we can move forward with that. I'm very glad to see the committees reinstituted. Hopefully Mr. Haldane, Carol Panalski, and Moonfist will have places they can go to bring their very valid and urgent needs forward. And yeah, I think there can be continuity from one administration to the next. Election cycles or not. There is a long history of wonderful reports and actions, and let's hope that we can keep those going. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Les Monington, 6750A Pasco Road, Sooke, BC. I believe that there's something coming forward here. In regards to 2119 Charters Road, there seems to be a miscommunication. No record of a guaranteeing service has been located. Staff doesn't seem to be able to find any of the records of my sewer connection where I bought in any way, shape, or form. I brought down some of the paperwork. Do you wish to see it? This is the Sooke Core Sewer Specified Area Boundary, dated August 11th, 2003. I gave it. Well, staff has I've already brought this down to staff 3 times, and 3 copies of this have been made at 3 different times. So I'm really surprised that there is no prior evidence of anything when I've got letter after letter. Where are the records? This has been going on for 11 years. It's a joke, in my opinion. This thing, you zoned it for high density, that property. You've got here 65 sewer connections. You're giving me an extra 5. I never paid for them. If you read that, I paid for 60 sewer connections, not 65, as this says, okay? It clearly states in there that it's to drain by gravity. I paid for the premium for that, and if you look at the other people that were on there, some of them paid less. It was explained to me that I was paying extra because I was getting gravity leaving my property. They told me it was going down through the new Throop Road that was being built. That hasn't happened. They said it could hook onto the old road that was taken in '96 from the Braemar developments. That didn't happen. Since then, I originally paid $93,000 for the sewer connections. You rezoned my property, which I didn't ask for, and I've since paid a little over $300,000 in property taxes. My taxes went from $8,000 to $43,000 in 1 year. I got nothing for that. I have no sewer. The road was never built. I'm now told that the road won't ever be built. Why did you people convince me that that road was being built and that I was getting a sewer? I paid in for it. I went into all these meetings. I did not approach you people or staff. You people approached me. So you haven't kept your end of the bargain in any way, shape, or form. How do you intend to solve this problem? You've got in here $788,000 it's going to cost to do it. Is that just for the north side of the ravine, or does that include the south side of the ravine?
So, Mr. Monington, I think there's a report coming later tonight, so you get to comment for the 2 minutes, and
okay.
I've let
Is
you.
my 2 minutes up?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's up when the red light went out. But what I want you to do is, I take your comments, but I want to make sure that you get a copy of this, or that council gets a copy of this. Are you okay with that?
Council is more than welcome to have a copy
And I'll
of
make
that.
sure you
Do you want a copy of the receipt whereby I paid back in 2006?
No, I think
because
we have.
There seems to be some
I think
confusion.
we have that information. If I there's, I think, well, but any information you can give us, greatly appreciated. So, how's that?
Well,
so, our corporate officer is going to make it available to council.
sure, take them up to them.
Caroline, there's another one here. So, anyways, Mr. Monington, I think that you've given us some information. There's a presentation tonight, so if council wishes to hear, I mean, you're the only delegation here, so it would take unanimous consent to hear you talk any longer. So I would ask that question. If council was willing to listen to Mr. Monington for. Oh, after the presentation anyway. Sorry. Yes, so you can come back there. So you're on the agenda. This property is on the agenda somewhere else further down.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
So I'll be able to speak to it after you spoke to that? Thank
Yes.
you. And I'll get those papers back?
Yes.
Seem to be rare.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other members of the public would like to speak? Councillor Haldane.
Herb Haldane, 3118C, Otter Point Road. I guess what I'd like to establish, is if there isn't going to be some roads built that are in our highway transportation master plan that's tied to the OCP, then that should be public. So I'm assuming that all the roads that are on our plan to build are still in effect. If they're not being built, or somebody's made that decision, that should be made public then. So if Throop Road's not going through, then I'd like that to be advertised. It's not going through, so people aren't planning on rezoning and planning on getting sewer hookups and so on and so forth. And it should have been done by a council resolution. I don't remember it ever happening, so I'd be interested to know where that came from. Thank you.
Thank you. So, are there any other members of the public that would like to have input? There's none here. All three of you spoke. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I do remember that there was a conversation at this table when we did not get the funding from the federal government to help put Throop Road through. So I just caution the suggestion that it was a decision made by council, perhaps in camera, or perhaps saying that staff had made that decision. It was put on the back burner as we didn't get the funding from the federal government. So I just want to suggest some caution in pointing fingers, that's all.
So I move that bylaw the bylaw cited as Officers and Delegations of Authority Bylaw number 672, 2017 be adopted.
Any other questions?
No, look good.
All those in favor?
That's fine.
Carried. Okay, the next is
Sooke Road.
bylaw number 680, 600-43-5229, Sooke Road, that bylaw said that the zoning amendment number 680, 600-43, 2017 be adopted.
That's for the childcare place.
Yes, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
I'm opposed. I opposed it all along.
Okay. Councillor
Opposed.
Parkinson is opposed. Okay, next is Local Government Leadership Academy Annual Leadership Forum. Councillor authorized Councillor Casper to attend the Local Government Leadership Academy Annual Leadership Forum to be held January 31st, 2018 to February 3rd, 2018 in Richmond, BC, and that the cost for the forum to be expended from the 2018 Council Travel Conferences Education budget.
I think he knows everything. He doesn't have to go.
Seconded. We have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the next one is single-use plastic bag bylaw. The council provide the following comments to the City of Victoria regarding. So now we have some sample bylaws from the City of Victoria. Is there a staff report on this? To our CAO?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. There is a report?
There is a report in your package.
Yeah, oh yeah, I saw that part.
There's no presentation by staff, other than the recommendation that was presented.
It says, okay, the recommendation is that council provide the following comments to the City of Victoria regarding the single-use. Okay. Oh, that we just support, okay. So does this go in the form of a letter?
At the direction of council, yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to send a letter to the City of Victoria?
Second.
Moved by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? No. Oh, discussion, sorry. You don't want to do that. Okay, Councillor Parkinson has some discussion.
So I think I'm a firm believer in not using plastic bags, but I think it would be very difficult for the District of Sooke to put it in place with only one bylaw enforcement officer. And I think that what we have to do is educate the businesses on not to use them, such as a number of stores that I go to that aren't in town here. Well, Costco is a fine example where you don't get plastic bags. So I think that other businesses should be informed of the benefits, and so they were saying that they were going to be sending out information pieces. So I think that we as a town should use that and make sure that all businesses and everyone gets the information. So, thank you.
Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. And just as a follow-up, when reading through this, that was one of the key points, sort of the final point at the bottom there, saying that we request the City of Victoria share the results of their findings. And we, it might have been through Transition Sooke, actually, that a couple of years ago talked to our local businesses, and they were all on board with initiating something like this. So I wholeheartedly support it. I think it'll be great.
Anybody else? Good. Any other comments? Councillor Ray? Councillor Loggins? No. Excuse me. Well, I have some comments. I think that the world's changing, and I think there's expectations that single-use plastic bags are widely viewed now as a negative to our environment. And I think that if we pass a bylaw, I think that the public wouldn't say necessarily enforce, but they would express their displeasure. There's enough people who know the badness of plastic bags and the single-use plastic bags that I think that they would start being vociferous in locations where they were being used. So I think it's one of those things that it's a momentum thing. If you pass a bylaw that say that they're banned in the District of Sooke, I think that people would catch on quickly. So I don't think it requires as much enforcement as we think. But anyways.
I'd like to move the recommendation. I don't think it's been done. Oh, it did.
Call the
Okay.
question. Thank you. Okay, next is the report on Stantec report, sewer serviceability for 2119 Charters Road. And I believe our Director of Development Services will be making this presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just before I get into the report, I'd just like to clarify a few things that were brought up by the member of the public a little bit earlier. I don't think anybody from staff, including myself, would say that Throop Road would never be built. I would suggest that there is no short-term or medium-term plan to build Throop Road. Now I will get into the report. I was asked to put a report together with regards to the availability of connecting 2119 Charters Road to sewer. The history of this property is a little before my time, and I don't want to delve into the rezoning right at this point in time and how we got here. But I can tell you from the pure simple fact that gravity-fed system from 2119 Charters Road cannot be accomplished. It has to be it's a pressurized system no matter which way you go, and it has to be pumped into the system. Even if Throop Road was to be built as it was slated to be some time ago, to take sewer down through that area, over Throop Road into Phillips line, into the existing Phillips sewer line, it would have to be pumped because that's under pressure as well. The other way you can take it is up Throop Road to the existing connection or to the existing manhole or the existing stub on Throop Road, but that has to be pumped. The other way to go, if at all practical, would be along Charters Road itself to the low pressure main, but that will also have to be forced as well. There is no way to service this property with gravity. Even if you go across the gully into the gravity-fed system on Drennan, you can't do it without a pump. The report that was put together did not mean to say that we didn't have an agreement to service him with 60 or 65 units. There may be a mistake there with regards to the amount. Mr. Monington has bought, but has paid for the connections. We just can't figure out how to service it other than doing it through pressurized system and a lift station. I'll be happy to answer questions from that.
My mic's on. I have lots of questions that have been ongoing. I guess is that, Mr. Monington, and he's here tonight, and hopefully he could come and answer some questions after this presentation. But I can see the evidence, and I mean, we saw the evidence. I saw it on my desk tonight, and I've talked to Mr. Monington on several occasions, as I'm probably sure other councillors have. It's a question is he's bought into a system that I think that we can't provide the service. That's at the end of all of this is that he's paid for it in good faith. He wrote a check, however how he paid for it, but he bought into the service thinking he was being hooked up. That was certainly his intention. He's never changed that story, and I don't think he's ever misrepresented that fact. So so now we have a report in front of us. So its question is, what are we going to do next? Are we going to provide Mr. Monington with the hookup at the District of Sooke that he believes he's entitled to, and now we have a cost. At least now, and hopefully we've got somewhere where we haven't got to for a long time. And now I don't want this to get lost again. I want it to go forward. Is council going to support a hookup for Mr. Monington, one way or the other? That's the question that's going to be in front of all of us. I think he's done his part. I'm of the opinion we have to put something in the ground that he can hook up to. That's my personal opinion on this. When I look at everything, it looks like he paid in earnest to be part of our sewer system. So how he gets hooked up, I would prefer it to be cheaper, but it doesn't look like there's a cheaper method here. So, anyways, that's my first opening comment. So.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to echo the similar comments that you've made, and the other thing is I would also like to see and be able to read the documents that Mr. Monington has provided. I know that this matter goes back to 2006, so there's nobody on the staff at this time that was part of that discussion. 2006 might be Councillor Parkinson and Councillor Casper. And so I want to make sure that things are done right and that the interests of Mr. Monington are also protected. And to get a sense of what those agreements were, if we don't have it on our files, I'd like to see if it's in the paperwork that Mr. Monington has provided. Because I do note that a comment on page 254 of the report of our agenda package, it talks about providing a grant or a benefit to a business. I understand what that legality may be, but if Mr. Monington was not provided with the proper information at the time that he agreed, then I think we need to see what he has and what's written. So I just want to make sure that his rights are protected as well.
Thank you. I too echo your guys' comments. I think what's really important for me going forward is we've read this staff report and then getting the information from Mr. Monington, sort of cross-referencing what was promised to him or agreed to upon by the district to him back in 2006, and again, predates most of our time, and then come up with a solution that we can make work, because it's been long enough without having a solution. Now that we've got the Stantec report, we've got information that Mr. Monington is going to provide for us. I think between Mr. Monington and staff and council, we can come up with something that's going to work and get you the hookups that you've paid for however many years ago.
Through your worship to staff, we do have the records from 2006, correct? We have all the minutes of the meetings. So could we look it up to see if there's information from back then on what was discussed at that time?
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Parkinson, yes, we do have the agendas and the minutes from 2006, so we can certainly look those up.
Just an added comment to Councillor Parkinson's comment, and that is I'm just also wondering, we probably would not have any record of staff discussions. Is that what I'm hearing? That's more of the issue as to what was and wasn't discussed isn't on the record. So the agenda and the packages are there, but the actual conversations that may have occurred between staff and Mr. Monington may not have been recorded.
Through your worship to Councillor Ray, that is correct.
Through your worship, as I recall, a lot of the minutes back then had a lot of information put into them. It was after that it was decided not to keep writing down so much information. So there might be something there, and I think it would be worth a look. Thank you.
Good point. My final comment is that I think we need to do something. This has dragged on long enough. 2 councils that I've been on now, some of you longer, and I think that it's time to come to resolution, because it can't just keep festering away, because no answer is worse than a bad answer or a good answer, and that's unknown, and we appear to be not giving an answer to someone who wants an answer. So, and not appear, we are not giving an answer, and it's gone on and on and on and on. So, I would entertain a motion from somebody in council to move this forward.
Yes, Your Worship. You did indicate to Mr. Monington that he could have an opportunity to speak while we were dealing with this matter, and I just wanted to know whether or not that he wanted that opportunity since you offered it to him.
Councillor Loggins.
And I do want to echo what Councillor Ray mentioned about the new information being brought forward before we make any motions to move anything forward as well. But I would like to definitely hear from Mr. Monington.
Mr. Mr. Monington, would you like to, come up to the front? Would you like to entertain questions? Okay. Oh, anybody have questions for Mr. Monington that they would like to ask? Councillor Ray.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Monington. I wasn't around in 2006, and I know at times we've had land use committees, and I'm just wondering if you could just sort of generally outline for me how the property came. Was it all done through council chambers? Was there a land use committee? Was there some other process and discussion with staff? Just so I've got the context for how the decisions were being made. Yes, back in 2006, you said.
Well, it actually started prior.
Could you turn your mic on, please, Mr. Monington?
Yep.
Is that on?
Yep, you're on.
It started in about 2003. The district of Sooke was instructed that by the province, I believe, that they had to get a sewer system in place to stop the pollution in the harbour and the basin. And the province was pushing it. And Sooke didn't really have any money. They drew some lines and they approached me, do you want to be included in the sewer specified area? And I said yes. There's a number of us that were approached. I said yes. They went away. They came back about 3 months later and they said that I'd been excluded from the sewer specified area, as did a bunch of the others, and that we could now buy into the sewer specified area if we wished. I agreed to buying in, and that was in 2003. We then had to post a letter of credit, and that letter of credit, I think, rode till about 2006 when the sewer was finally in the ground and ready to be used. There was a string of nasty letters sent to me after that about why I wasn't connecting to the sewer and that they were going to force me to it. I have the letters here. I never hooked up because it wasn't available to me. I wasn't going to spend $250,000 plus to try and get it hooked up. You told me that it was going to be hooked up. It was going to drain by gravity. It was very clear in the letters that were given to me. I paid for it. I repeatedly went back to staff and councils and mayors when am we being hooked up. And it's just like I've been stonewalled. And people would repeatedly say to me, don't worry. I don't want to hear the words don't worry anymore because it's falling on deaf ears. You then came to me and said that you needed property on Throop Road for the new entrance to Sooke, and that the province had made it a stipulation that the Throop Road connector go in before the roundabout went in. I didn't really believe that, so I went down to Transportation and Highways and I spoke to Bob Webb, who was the senior I want to say approving officer, but that was your title. And Bob Webb was in charge of the South Island transportation system. And he told me and gave me an example. And he said that Sooke, we were making them put in the bypass because there needed to be a new east-west corridor made. And they were going to put it down Throop Road and then down Grant Road and come out the other side. And that was going to be the new Highway 14. And then they were going to allow the roundabout to go through. They were going to control the accesses coming onto it, they said, because they didn't want a repeat of what was going to happen and did happen in Prince George. Once they'd done that connector, the city of Prince George just started granting accesses, commercial and residential, onto that main connector, and Highways didn't want that. So it seemed pretty clear to me that this thing was going forward. So, okay, I'd had an application in for a mobile home park starting in '96 when it was CRD back then. there was no appetite for a mobile home park. They said there was to be no more mobile home parks west of the bridge, period. I said, well, what's the rationale for that? We've got too many mobile home parks. I said it's affordable housing. They didn't care. So then they said, well, we're not going to allow a mobile home park. We want high density there because it's going to be the new entrance to Sooke. And we're going to need a piece of commercial there because we don't want all this high density people coming into Sooke, getting in their cars and driving in. And they wanted the people from Sun River, which was getting to be quite a number, to come in that way instead of going down onto Sooke Road and coming up that way. All the traffic studies that had been done at that time indicated that this was what was needed. Where are we? I'm now told it's not even on the books or going forward in any way, shape, or form. What am I left with? I'm left with a piece of land that the government is trying to raise the taxes on repeatedly. Every year I have to go and fight it. They feel it's serviced by the sewer. I'm telling them that it's not. At the last meeting with the assessment authority, they gave me a year to get this resolved. It's not resolved, not through any lack of attempt on my part. I don't think when I came here in June of last year and I spoke to Miss Sullivan, I asked them, I brought in this paper, and I went in there because of a tax problem. The District of Sooke was double dipping on me. They were charging me for double the taxes that year, and they were charging me for 7 sewer connections. I have the paperwork to support that. I was rather excited. I come in to speak to Mr. Goebel, and it was the first week in June. The tax notices had just come out. Mr. Goebel was on holidays. So they shuffled me into Miss Sullivan's office, and I presented my case. I gave her the copies of the tax notices here, and I also brought in copies of the letters that you have there to prove my position in this. And Miss Sullivan took photocopies of those documents from the that you have got now and made notes on all this. And I asked that this get going. Nothing happened then. A month later, I get a call from Mr. Howitt. Mr. Howitt asked me to come and meet his sewer guy, the sewer monkey. And I went down there, and the gentleman gave me these 2 pieces of paper.
Please refrain from derogatory terms.
What was it? What was derogatory?
Sewer, wait, just say the sewer expert. How's that?
Okay. You're saying that I'm not giving him proper respect. Is that what you're saying?
No, just we stay away from.
Okay.
Names.
So he gave me.
Yeah.
You gave me these, and you're.
If I can have you direct your comments to the mayor and council instead of directly to staff, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
These 2 pieces of paper, okay? And the sewer man says $40,000 less and it solves all your problems. And the man left the room, and I informed Mr. Howitt that that was just the tip of the iceberg, that didn't take into account any of the piping. It didn't take into account the kiosk, the pump chamber, motors, the switching, the power to run it, the standby generator, any of that. It was totally unrealistic in my opinion. Mr. Howitt took a photocopy of that paperwork that I brought in, and I was to come back in a month's time. Come back in a month's time, that paperwork had disappeared. He said, can you bring it in again? I don't have a copy of it. I said, well, Miss Sullivan has copies because I gave her, and she made notes and everything. We can't find that either. So we then go, I think, next to October the 10th, I have another problem. The numbering on the properties on the duplex that I'd sold had not got through to Hydro. It's an ongoing problem. The new people that had bought the place could not get their addresses and could not get Hydro because Hydro had not received this piece of paper from Mr. Goebel. So I went in to speak to someone because the new people can't get Hydro and the post office hadn't received anything else, hadn't received the same documents. Mr. Goebel wasn't in. He was away for 3 days, and Mr. Hallett and Miss Sullivan came out of a meeting and said, well, we'll take the meeting right now, and Mr. Goebel can't do anything. So we went in. I explained that I have to come to you people because BC Hydro won't take my word for this. I have to deal with you people, and you people have to contact them. So after that, I said to them, what is happening with this sewer and this road? I'm trying to get this thing moving forward. That was in October of last year. And I asked them to bring it before mayor and council in the next 2 weeks or a month. That was October, early October of 2016. Can you tell me why nobody would make any effort to do anything in that regards? And that I have to send out an email to you, mayor and council, in June of this year to get something initiated? Do you feel this is good governance? Would you people want to be on the end of this? All I see is me paying out all the time. I've given you over $400,000 in the last 10 years over there. And what have I got for that? Have I got a sewer? No. Have I got a road? No. Have I got a zoning that's even practical there? Doesn't appear to me. Commercial's worth nothing, yet the assessment authority is trying to double and triple the property taxes assessment. They give me a year. And I'm hoping to get a letter saying, hey, I haven't got a sewer connection. Because they're of the belief that this thing is done and I've got connection and this is valuable land and everything's going forward. I'd like to be treated the same way as you people would like to be treated, and I don't feel that any of you would like to be treated the way I've been treated here. Do you have any questions of me?
Through your worship, this is just a staff. As I recall, in 2003, because that was when I moved here, that there was a referendum or the alternate approval process, and that was for the road that was going to be the bypass, because I was in the audience, and the road was going to be going from the property across the road here down through the Throop Road, and that was going to be our secondary road, the Highway 17, so the vehicles would bypass. And it went out to the public, and the vote failed. And the government had put on the table the millions of dollars to have the road built, and it went out to the public, and the public said, we don't want it. And what the big fight was over was because it was going through the golf course. And so both sides were the main golf course here. And so the people who came all out in force spoke about the golf course, and those were the people that all came out and voted, and we gave the money back to the government, and that's why the road has not been built.
Well, can I speak? Do I need to push this? That's what I thought too. But even after the referendum had failed, Elizabeth and the planner lady, Marlena Elliott, yes, continued to approach me, and yes, no less, we have to build this. And they were showing me plans. They were showing me plans with ridiculousness. They didn't account for the cuts or the fills in any way, shape, or form. They then tried to get another 5 meters from me. Sorry.
Through your worship. So all I know was the referendum failed. It was going nowhere. We had no money as a district. everybody talked about us because we returned the millions upon millions of dollars. And to this day, I can't say, even when I was on council previously, that there was ever talk of the road going forward after they gave the money back. Because there's no way Sooke has that kind of money to. We find it so hard to build a sidewalk downtown, let alone build a road all the way through our town.
Yes, thank you. My first term on council, we did in fact have a transportation master plan. Throop Road was going to go through. It wasn't going to be exactly like the referendum that had failed. It was a new design, and it was all contingent upon a grant money, which they weren't successful in doing, but it was still left on the books. So Mr. Monington is correct in saying that it was still being pursued. It was still hopeful to build Throop Road. It just had a different alignment than what the referendum was. And being a part of CPark had to do the same thing. CPark had to set aside land to try and have the road go through as well. So it was always on the books and always looked like it was going to happen. It just kept getting deferred later on in the capital plan because we didn't have the funds and we were unsuccessful in the grant. So the referendum failed. We had to turn money. We tried again through grant. We didn't get the grant. It still stayed on the books and just kept getting pushed back. For me, I think that this needs to take priority. I think we're at a point now where we have a Stantec report of your particular piece of property. I think given the information that you've now supplied the district with, I think we need to cross-reference that information, and I would like to see this on the next council meeting. I mean, I know that our agenda is full and I know that it's soon, but Mr. Monington's been doing this for years and years and years. So I would like to, I don't know if I need to make a motion to direct staff to have this issue brought to our December 11th meeting, but I would like it to take priority. If something else has to fail, then something else has to fail. My motion is that this take priority and precedence over other agenda items. I would like to see this come back December 11th. So we can discuss where we're at to try and come up with a best case scenario. We might not have your problem solved, and I know that's not what you want to hear. You're making an effort. But I would like the effort to be made that we're going to make you a priority. I would also like to know if we can get a letter for Mr. Okay, thank you. I'd also like to know if we can get a letter for Mr. Monington that he can send to the Assessment Authority saying that he does in fact not have sewer on that property. Or whatever language they're going to need from you to state that you don't have sewer, because we all clearly know you don't. So.
Okay. I'd like to bring up something on this thing. What you've asked for here in this study is...
So, just for a procedural thing, is that we've got a motion and a seconder on there. So we'll debate the motion at this point with council. It's
okay.
A procedural thing, so we're going to...
Can I come back to this?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Oh.
Thank you, Your Worship. In terms of Councillor Berger's request for a report, I'm just wondering if we can put a timeline together so that we can start, so we can visually and we can document all of the things that happen as you've sort of outlined. There is one question pardon me? Just so that we can get a sense of the time and sort of milestones or critical points that occurred in terms of decision making. I'm hoping some of the paperwork that you've given us tonight will help do that, because if it is going to come before council, then it should be part of the public record in terms of those points.
I would ask, is it appropriate, some of the information that we've received tonight through to the CAO from Mr. Monington, we'd have to have his permission, because it's his documents. Because if it's going to be part of a public package, he's given it to us tonight. I'm pretty sure he's not worried about it becoming public, the information. Okay, so... I don't want it to get lost. I don't want this to just end. Yep. So, okay, we're going to go back to the motion. So I just want to make sure that you're aware that what we're proposing is the documentation you gave us tonight is going to be part of the public package next meeting. Okay? Thank you. Okay. Okay, so Ms. Sullivan, you understand that, so that documentation that we have now through the staff, is that's going to be part of the package for us for next week as reading material for all councillors, the ones that are not here, the mayor and Councillor Casper. They would be able getting the same package that we have tonight for
Absolutely.
any decisions that would be made on December 11th.
We will do our best. We have very few planners right now, and I understand this is a priority for council, so we'll do our best to make it a priority for council, or we will make it a priority for council.
Thank you.
The one comment I need to make in part of this staff report for information is the costs to the district in rectifying this situation, and they are substantial. So what we will do is as part of the report we pull together for December 11th, we will also include into our budget discussions, which start December 4th, a placeholder on this issue so that council can deliberate on the total cost during 2018 budget deliberations, and then have more background available for you, including a timeline, that which we can produce through our records and through the records of Mr. Monington. So I just think it's important not to lose sight of both the issue of the budget impact as well as the historical information.
Yep. And thank you for that, Ms. Sullivan, our CEO, is that's the critical part, is that because this is going to be in December the 11th meeting or December the 4th or a special council meeting, but it has to be part of our budget deliberation between January and March when we cut that budget, so that we know if we're supporting this sewer hookup in any form or fashion, then we need to make sure that it's part of the discussion. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just fielding a question from our Director of Finance. I need a question with respect to January and March, and I was seeking clarification.
Just like to add, Your Worship, that there's no point in me bringing a budget forward for December 4th when we have very large items like this outstanding, because it will change everything. So,
and I understand that. I was projecting that would be on the 2018 discussion. That was my kind of thought.
Sorry, Your Worship, it is what we are bringing forward on the 4th is the 2018 to 2022 plan.
Okay, sorry. So. Yeah, now I got it. We're talking same thing, just two different languages. So, so Mr. Monaghan, you want to make one last comment? So.
Yes. In regards to this thing here,
yes,
I asked staff to deal with not 60 SFEs. That property is now zoned high density, somewhere in the neighborhood of 243 units. Exactly. So 60 sewer connections isn't going to do anything for something that's zoned for 200 plus units. So getting a study done for 60 is way under what it should be. And if you look at this study on page 256, present capacity is 65%. Raising it by 65 sewer connections, as this is proposing, takes it to 70%. If you put in 200, that puts it over 80% capacity. And if you look at your page 257, anything over 80%, you've got to redo your pump stations downstream from that. So you should be looking at what that property is zoned for, not for the 60 units. So this, in my opinion, is slightly flawed. You know, what are you going to do? Downstream, and to come later, you're going to see something happen with the old golf course. Don't you think you should allow for capacity for that, and maybe the community association lands there? This seems to be pointing directly to the property to the north of the ravine. What does Sooke going to do about the property that I've sold south of the ravine, where there's 22 units going in? how are they going to solve that dilemma? Okay, because they're just looking at the oneness, in my opinion, after reading this. So the SFEs have to go up accordingly, because I was told that we could purchase more SFEs at the time that we needed them at the prevailing rate of the time. So whatever the rate is now, or when I need them, I'd be buying them at that rate.
Yeah. Your comments are fair, but that's part of the overall sewer study capacity for the whole kit and caboodle. So, but you're right.
No, this isn't a study for the whole kit and caboodle. This is
No,
for
but I'm
60.
talking about the sewer capacity at the plant end and all the pumping stations as well.
No, I think it's just referring to the gateway connector is what it says in here. No, if you read on page, oh boy, probably 257, somewhere in there. Or 258. If you read this in a little closer detail, you realize that it's just on the 65.
Okay.
And it doesn't say anything about the split on the ravine.
If I may, Your Worship, I was directed to, from a previous in-camera meeting, as the report says, to have our engineering firm Stantec look at the capacity and the cost for servicing 2119 Charters Road based on a number. That number, whether it was 60 or 65, and that may be my error. We were only looking at that, and that's what this report entails. We realize that property and other properties in the area are capable of some sort of development and could be looked at connecting to the sewer, but that's not what we were asked to do. And I would suggest that if Mr. Monington wanted to do something a little bit more for the property rather than just the 60 or 65, that we would have to do a complete sewer serviceability study over and above the 60 or 65 to see what capacity we have left in the line servicing the area. It still doesn't negate the issue of the fact that, rightly or wrongly, what Mr. Monington was told back in the day, where it could be gravity fed, and on behalf of the district, I apologize for that. But it can't be done by gravity, and it has to be done by pump. I appreciate that when you came in and you spoke to myself and my plant manager, we had worked up some other costs, and I'm not too sure how that cost got relayed to you. But there are methods of reducing the cost with regards to the lift station itself. There are other models out there. But the models that we were looking at for the Stantec report are models that we know and that meet our standards, and that we can take on maintenance for them. The property on the north side of the ravine that you have recently sold, I have been working with the person that has bought that property. And he has asked the question with regards to the serviceability for, I believe it was 22 units. 22 units. We have done a sewer serviceability, and he is capable of hooking up to the low-pressure system on the north side of the ravine. He will have to pump to that, and he knows that.
So who's paying? Pardon me.
Oh, sorry.
Can I ask a question?
And he would be responsible for the method of pumping. There are, because he's from what I understand, he's doing cluster development. He can do independent pumps from there. It would have to be engineered, of course, but that would be his responsibility to show how that would take place.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So if I bought into the sewer area, which I have, and I sell a piece of that land, why would that guy have to go off and put in pumps? I don't understand that. Someone's got to pay. This gentleman shouldn't have to pay. I mean, it's all supposed to go by gravity. I mean, why are we paying? You know, you had an alternate solution to it going down through Road. There was supposed to be 13 lift stations, and when Chew got finished, 3 of them were gone. They were constantly lifting the grade because they were getting paid so much a meter for getting it done. The foremen were high grading it and lifting the grade. At the end of the day, most of the people that were on Charters Road were supposed to be getting their sewer by way of gravity. Dan, the moving guy, the people right across from me, all those people were supposed to get it by way of gravity. They lifted the elevation of those pipes. All of them had to pump as well.
Okay.
There was just no oversight on any of this stuff.
Well, I think that, I guess we've got a motion on the floor, and I'm going to try and get back to that, but there's a lot more. There's actually going to be more questions out of that. So
there will be a lot of questions.
So our motion on the floor, I'm going to call the question. Oh, did? So all in favor? Oh, yeah, so it was all in favor. Okay. So I think, Mr. Monington, December 11th, we'll have a more robust discussion.
A more robust discussion?
Yes.
Oh, I look forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Monington, for coming tonight.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
Your Worship, you should pass a motion to recess.
I did. I said no, I said I'm passing a motion that we take a 5-minute Bible.
The mover and seconder? Thank you.
I called the question. Okay, so the next item is 12.2, Regional Growth Strategy Dispute Resolution Process Update. I hope our CAO has a report on this, because that's where I'm kind of guessing. I hope you do. So it's just basically you all have the information in the package. It's just move receipt, I guess.
Move receipt.
So moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Berger. Okay, comments, questions about the regional growth strategy? Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. Just looking at our supplemental information, it shows just day one of sort of what they went through. Do we have any outcomes, or is this just a standard?
This starts in December.
That's for the proposed December 6th.
December 6th, the 8th, yes.
Do we know when, has there been any update leading into this, or everything's still exactly the same?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, the agenda was received on November the 24th, and there has been no update other than in your package you will have received all the input from all the other assenting and dissenting municipalities, so all the information is there. For it, my understanding is, or my presumed understanding is either Councillor Casper or Mayor Tate will be attending portions of the agenda at the meeting where the agenda is something of significance for the District of Sooke. It is, I was talking to the mediator this afternoon, and it would be beneficial if there was somebody there from the District of Sooke at all times, regardless of the agenda, whether it's staff or whether it's a council member. So I leave it to council to decide amongst themselves who will attend and when, and put what part of the agenda.
I would like to agree with our Director of Development Services. I think it's absolutely critical. If you read the, particularly the dissenting opinions, it's actually, their opinions are so strongly worded that it really looks like we should be there at all times. And talking about water as a sustainable resource and not allowing it to our borders, which is clearly identified, I think, in our OCP and in our new OCP, it's even stronger. But I think I have to agree. So I would actually request that the CAO make sure that so we have somebody present there at all times. Include, like, if it's not Councillor Casper or Mayor Tate, then it's somebody from staff or another councillor, because it's too critical, and that we be given the right to speak there, because we've ensured that by participating. If you look right now, there's some serious things that, I mean, obviously, but there's some politicians that are choosing to, voice their opinions online, and I think it's a scary place. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with this being a huge priority for the district, and some of the comments that have been made on social media. And if I can't get staff to attend, I will make a commitment to attend myself.
And what led me to the big question is that, do you have the right to speak, or is it only the people that we appoint? Is it Councillor Casper and Councillor Tate that are allowed to speak? So,
I was just provided assurances from the Director of Development Services that anybody can speak.
Oh, okay, good.
It would be helpful for me to know what council's positions are on certain matters, so I will endeavor to meet with various members of council so you can let me know what your priorities are.
Okay. I can give you my position right now.
Okay.
My position is that I support water to any area that requests it, and that the zoning be left to the the authority in charge of that area. I mean, there's no other way around it. I think zoning, being controlled by other member agencies of the 13 municipalities is a scary thing. So, as an example, I was at a Juan Fuca Water Commission meeting, and it's a matter of public record, so I can comment on it. There was talk about extending the existing Juan Fuca water supply to the end of the Kemp Lake water supply system. One of the members there, who has nothing to do with anything, said, what about the upland property owners along that property line, along that water line? And I think I've shared that with our Director of Development Services. I know it sounds kind of a benign statement, but the first question should have been, why are we hooking up the water, and what's the reason for the the unpotable water or whatever it is at the other end? But the question wasn't that. The question was, what about those upland property owners, and what development will be going along West Coast Road? So that's how people think outside of our area, and that's at the expense of the people of getting good water. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one other item, and it's notated in the report for your acceptance, is even through the mediation process, anything that's agreed to within the mediation process will be sent out to all the municipalities for assent, and I would suspect that may not be assent, which will kick it into arbitration. But every municipality will get a so-called second kick at it, if you will.
Well, given the tight timelines, it almost looks like it's set up to fail anyway. So, but anyway, sorry, that's an opinion.
Through your worship, I would just like to state that I'm in agreement with Acting Mayor Pearson, and that I believe that everyone in the district of Sooke should have water, and in the outlying area as well.
Councillor Ray?
Yes, through your worship, to our CAO. It was both in the last council and this council. I think that we've always unanimously supported the right of water to our boundaries. And I think it's frustrating, and this is my own personal opinion, I think it is frustrating where we see how things are structured, that other municipalities impose their beliefs on the regional growth strategy by the weighted votes and how it happens, and that the people of Sooke, as much as we would like to stand up and have that strong voice, and I agree with what Mr. Bateman said earlier, but at the end of the day, when there's a vote, we're one vote, and I don't believe that for the community of Sooke, people who don't live here are making the decisions for those basic rights to water. And I don't believe people should have to be paying $200 and $300 a month because their wells are dry to get water. And so I will leave it at that.
Okay. Anybody else want to give the CAO their thoughts? Councillor Loggins?
Our thoughts are in the growth strategy, so I trust that you'll represent us well there.
So, is that enough information for you, CAO?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? I have some discussion, so I'm going to talk about it. I think there's some really good points in here. I think that what I would like to see is that in our strategic plan is that there is the Climate Action Committee, and I'm not sure where it's in good governance or not good governance. I think it's there, is where it is, somewhere in there, isn't it? Where we've got the climate action. There's some key points, and I think that. And I'm going to make it worthwhile for Mr. Bateman to stay here all night tonight. I think that in the presentation that they did at the last meeting, there's some key things that we could all do And I think that we adopt some simple principles that go a long way, but we have to recognize some of those simple principles. I mean, things like ride sharing, we talked about, taking alternative trips and things like that. But I think there's a lot of things that we can do, and we can be the leaders. When we build a new library, it got discussed. I think those are the things that, if we could get it into our strategic plan on global warming, etc., I think it's very critical. So, anyways,
Your Worship.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind members of council that we do have the new EV stations going in at Evergreen Mall, so that is contributing to the district's climate change reduction strategies.
Yes, Your Worship. I just wanted to add the report sets the tone for the future and how wet it is getting, how important it is for asset management point of view that we invest in plans for the future of how we're going to take care of mainly our storm sewer system and its impact also on the sewer system. We've got a study that council did request. We've applied for a grant to help offset the cost of that. There's a lot of grants out there now for work that's along these lines, and we're making sure as staff that we're taking advantage of these opportunities right now. But it's clear that it's just getting drier and drier in the summers and wetter in the fall, and that has a big impact on the way we need to set the budgets as well.
To our Director of Finance, thank you. They're key points. You're exactly right. And it goes back to our previous statement about water. It goes back to fire budgeting. It goes for fire prevention. So there's a lot of things that are impacted. So thank you.
Through your worship, I have a notice of motion at the end for one of the letters that's on page 403 for the Wounded Warrior Run, BC. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. Thank you.
Nothing to report at this meeting. I'll have plenty to report at the next.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just an update on some of the meetings I've attended. I won't go into details. Met with the Sooke community. I'm a little behind because I left sick in October. I've attended the Sooke Community Association meeting, a Crest Finance meeting, 2 Vancouver Island Library Board meetings, and also just like to share that information from the last meeting is that Sooke is starting to move forward. They do have an exterior design, and they'll be meeting with staff to take it to the next step. So I think that's an important milestone that things are starting. And then what will follow that will be a public engagement in terms of talking about the interior of the library. And I've also attended a second Crest meeting. And that's good. Thank you.
So I attended on November 20th the Regional Transportation Transition Town meeting, and it was a good crowd out there. There were about 30 people out there talking about the road from Sooke, and the main discussion was concerning buses and having an alternate bus route on the road. Then on November 23rd, I went to it was the Royal Roads Tourism presentation at the Prestige Hotel. And 27th was today, which I attended with the CAO, the DTAC meeting. Also went to the Santa Claus parade yesterday, which was great.
I attended the Remembrance Day Parade, laid the wreath on behalf of the District of Sooke for the mayor. And I think that's all I got for highlights. I haven't had a Waterpico Water Commission meeting. I went to a fundraiser on Saturday night for the Sooke Harmonies project, which was well attended, and was very, very, very cool. And all the little kids and some of the bigger kids were playing different musical instruments. I attended with Councillor Parkinson, so it was a lot of fun. And that's it. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to add that I did also attend the Remembrance Day Parade, and was also out, as well as many of those sitting on council that are here tonight, to the Santa Parade. And I just want to say once again what a fabulous job the Sooke Lions and the EMCS students did in putting it together. It was amazing how many people were out, and the staff getting everything lit up, and the work that goes behind all the work that the staff did. And I really enjoyed the opportunity, and yeah, glad you've done it.
That was going to be my closing comments. What I was going to say. That's okay. Thanks, Councillor. I want to the CAO and to our staff, 2 big, long agendas in the last couple of meetings. Thank you for putting it together. Thanks for bearing with us. Sometimes these meetings go long and we get testy, but thank you for the job that you guys do, not only tonight but every day. And thank you for getting the town ready for our Santa Claus parade. It was well received. Thank you for everybody that helped. And I know it's a group effort over there. And your staff, thank them for the town looked fantastic. Comments. We're very positive. So thank you very much. Councillor Loggins wants to finish the night.
Sorry to steal that from you. I'm just remembering that several of us also, I went to many of those things as well, but 2 things that we're forgetting about as a group would be the fire banquet that myself, Parkinson, and Tate attended, and the Canada 150 skit. That was a lot of fun. I think most of us were all there, yeah, which was a really great event and lots of fun. So a couple more things.
And I'm happy to live in the smoked salmon capital of the world, if she's watching.
Okay. Notice of motion for that council support the Wounded Warrior Run 2018 in the amount of $1,000. as the District of Sooke is home to an ever-increasing population of veterans, members of the military, and first responders. It's just notice. Dankeschön. I want to know who Mr. Goebel is.
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Parkinson. Can you cite the funding source for me? Oh, I thought you were voting on it. Oh, okay. My apologies. Right, yeah.
Sorry, we have a Rise and report on the following announcements. Council appoint Councillor Berger and Councillor Ray, alternate to the Sooke Electoral Area Parks and Recreation Commission for the year 2018. That was decided in camera. The Council appoint Patrick Grove and Jim Perkins as the District of Sooke community members to the Sooke and Electoral Area Parks and Recreation Commission for a 2-year term commencing January 1st, 2018. And that Council appoint Councillor Ray and Councillor Loggins alternate to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board for the year 2018. And that's sort of a nice way to spell library there. That Council appoint Heather Nelson as the District of Sooke community member to the Intermunicipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues, and that these resolutions all be released to the public.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Carried. Now, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Perfect.